the current moment, it probably makes more sense. I mean, let's look at the macroeconomic picture, right? None of these, there's no financial business model around any of the big AI companies. You know, their investment case requires them to be making, I think, what's like 2 trillion. The AI space needs to be making 2 trillion a year by 2030, which is 5 times the current entire software subscription space. So even if they find that money, who's paying it? Because that's got to come from you and me. I haven't got that money. So there's that. So what's that mean? Well, what that means is either these companies are going to go bust, or what's going to happen? I mean, we know at the moment they're subsidized. They're also massively subsidized. So the price we're actually paying for these models is massively subsidized. So even if you get a product into market, how are you going to work out your ROI when you don't know how much you're going to be charged for these models in the future? So for me, it already makes sense to be looking at the use of smaller models as part of a workflow. So things more like LangChain, for example, or variations thereof, because in that situation, you can keep the problem space smaller. It makes it much easier for you to mix and match your models and also your vendors. So you're less exposed to the risk of a vendor going bust or their prices jacking up. And also, we've seen situations where those models started degrading in behavior. So if you've broken, rather than having my problem is this big open single vendor based solution where something goes wrong, I'm screwed, break it down to smaller pieces. You can address those individually. You can start, to repatriate some of those models in situations where you can run them on your own infrastructure, right? Maybe you start running your own TPUs or whatever. But equally, what I found is when talking to people, they broke it down and they realized, oh, this thing, we've just worked out after a while what it does. We just replace that with our own code and it's better. But so for me, that model makes sense like now, because that's a model that actually helps me deal with the potential uncertainty going forward. It makes it easier to understand what's going on. It allows me to mix vendors, to mix models, and to reduce my overall exposure and to reduce my overall risk. You're not going to just get there by some kind of top-down vibe-coded monstrosity necessarily, but I think that makes sense now, right? Let alone in the future. And then the question is how you kind of tie all that stuff together is the tricky part.